Developing tonight, the Trump administration under fire from Democrats and free speech advocates for its crackdown on student protests on college campuses from coast to coast and here in L.A. Pro-Palestinian protesters say they are also being targeted because of their message. Kate Cagle has been following the story and brings us a Spectrum News 1 exclusive. Good evening, Kate.
Good evening, Giselle. The pro-Palestinian protesters claim the charges against them break from a long-standing policy in the city attorney's office not to prosecute peaceful protesters. And whether you think they should face charges or not, it's the city attorney's own tweets that could lead the judge to throw out the case. The morning commute brought to a standstill on the 110 freeway. But this was no traffic jam. It was a protest by Jewish activists calling attention to a war. Free Palestine! If Not Now is a movement of Jewish Americans pursuing Palestinian rights. Spokesperson Mel was not on the freeway that day, but said the Hanukkah protest in 2023 called for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war.
All we wanted was for the killing to stop.
She's speaking out for the 30 protesters now facing misdemeanor charges of failure to disperse, unlawful assembly, failure to comply, and obstruction of a street.
We were definitely surprised about the charges being filed.
Surprised because in LA, peaceful demonstrators are almost never charged, even for blocking traffic. If Not Now's attorney Colleen Flynn fighting to get the case thrown out for selective prosecution, accusing City Attorney Heidi Feldstein Soto of bias against pro-Palestinian causes and their supporters.
The only cases that we've seen that have been actually filed on and criminally prosecuted recently are pro-Palestine protests.
In fact, Judge Mark Windham found some evidence of biased prosecution in a recent order after the city attorney's office could only provide one other example of a traffic blocking activist facing charges out of over 200 similar cases in her tenure.
We really believe that there's some very troubling bias here. It's anti-Palestinian bias.
We tried to speak to Feldstein Soto about this at her first press conference in over 3 months.
Yes, Heidi, this is Kate Cagle from Spectrum News 1. I want to ask you about some of the freeway protests that your office is pursuing, the If Not Now protesters.
I was supposed to be out of here at 1 o'clock. I've got back-to-back meetings.
Okay, we're not getting answers from your office on these questions, and we have stories.
I don't comment on pending litigation, as you know.
In 2023, a union protest blocked traffic outside LAX for hours. City leaders like Councilmember Hugo Soto Martinez participated, placed in handcuffs, but never charged. Flynn has represented traffic blocking activists for 25 years and says her clients have never been prosecuted for peaceful actions, instead told to stay out of trouble in exchange for keeping a clean record. She points to Feldstein Soto's own pro-Israel tweets like this one after October 7th that condemned the attacks and added every nation and every moral person must support Israel defending her people. That tweet was later deleted.
Of course, public officials have a right to speak on whatever issue they want. But once they come out on one side of something, if they're only criminally charging and going after people who disagree with them, that becomes a problem.
Feldstein Soto disputes the bias allegations.
They're alleging that you're prosecuting them because you disagree with their message. We want to give you an opportunity
to prosecute on content, ma'am. You know that.
In court, her office argued the tweets preceded Israel's military escalation and thus do not necessarily indicate bias against the protesters. But the allegations of bias are not just coming from If Not Now. Another incident involved a Thanksgiving Day protest in 2023 outside the home of a prominent Israel lobbyist. A whistleblower from inside the city attorney's office said Feldstein Soto personally called then Chief Michael Moore to allege a prominent pro-Palestinian activist was involved. In a leaked confidential memo that's now part of this case, LAPD said the evidence didn't back her claims. No charges were filed. It's all enough for the judge in If Not Now's case to ask Feldstein Soto to hand over her emails, texts, and memos about the prosecution to determine if she's going after the protesters for their political beliefs.
These are Jewish values, are to speak out and to pursue justice. So that is what we are trying to do.
Mel is hoping their case will ultimately be dismissed. We also emailed the city attorney's office a series of questions about this case, including whether the policy on prosecuting protesters has changed. Giselle, we have not heard back at all.
Not even that they will provide those documents to you?
No.
Okay,
no.
all right.
They don't even respond.
Right. Okay, in terms of the protesters, you say these are misdemeanor charges. What do they face if they are held accountable?
Well, they could face jail time, they could face fines, fees, but their biggest concern, according to their attorney, is the impact of a criminal record on their careers. Any job that requires a background check or a fingerprint, for example, substitute teaching, this could have an impact. And really, when I talk to the protesters, their concern is about the bias. They point to that union protest outside LAX that involved nearly 200 people. To this day, none of them are facing charges. And we've seen more of these freeway protests over immigration, for example. So far, they're not facing charges for those actions either.
I know you'll stay on top of this for us, Kate Cagle reporting. Thank you. Thank you for watching our YouTube channel. For more stories in your communities, click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV for the latest information, balanced coverage, weather updates every 10 minutes, and more. We'll see you then.